Hello, I think we're live. Thank you so much for attending this webinar. This is the Write Better Cover Letters webinar. This is the third in our career series for the WordPress Blueprint at Skill Crush. 2 weeks ago, we talked all about boot camping your resume. Then last week, we revamped our social media presence, and we talked a lot about Twitter bios. Today, we are here to talk about writing better cover letters so you can get the job you want. I'm Randall Browning. I work on content and products here at Skill Crush. By the end of this call, I want you to be able to understand the ins and outs of what makes a great cover letter in 2014. So by that, I mean, how is a cover letter different today than it might have been even 5 or 10 years ago, and in the field of tech. And by the end of the call, I want you to have everything you need to write a great cover letter that can help you get the job that you want. Throughout this webinar, I'm going to ask you to comment. Please do that in the chat feature of the Google Hangout page. And you may need to pull out a pen and paper or a doc to take notes in. And if you have a recent or even an old cover letter, I want you to get that out just so you can kind of look at it during the webinar. Before we get started, I want to ask you if you have been in any of these situations. Do you dread writing cover letters? Put it off to the last minute, you've got your resume totally ready, but you just hate actually doing the cover letter. Do you ever feel like cover letters take so much time and then you aren't sure if they're worth it? So, I had a friend who applied for nearly 100 jobs before she was hired, which isn't unusual these days anyway. And she wrote a cover letter for every single one of those. And I mean, at a certain point, it gets faster, but do you ever feel like that it takes you so much time and you're not sure if all that work and writing is paying off? Have you spent hours writing cover letters that never turned out right? So you just keep tweaking it and you never feel like it has that something. If any of those apply to you, I want you to get started by leaving me a comment in the Google Hangout chat feature, and so I can kind of see where you're all at. Personally, I know that I have been there. Before I started working at Skill Crush, I was applying for content jobs excuse me, at different online publications. And I spent hours and hours writing the most tedious cover letters that obviously didn't work. And I'm not saying it's just my cover letter that didn't work, but I think that I wasn't looking at cover letters from the perspective that would have really helped me to stand out. So today we're going to talk about 3 steps or guidelines really to writing an amazing cover letter. And before I get started really into the real content of this, I want to say that this webinar isn't just another resource you could find online. I mean, you can Google how to write a cover letter. I've done it, and it'll tell you what to put in your intro paragraph, what to put in the second paragraph, how to format it. We are going to talk about best practices, but this isn't just a guide telling you to, introduce yourself, explain yourself. This is about how to approach cover letters in a new way, specifically in the field of tech. Okay, I'm going to get you guys looking at the PDF guide. You should have this presentation. If it wasn't emailed to you, I think it would be in your class page. And if not, I will send it out after so you can use it. Okay, so you should be able to see the guide. And let's talk about the 3 steps. First is know your context. Second, tell a short story, as in not a really long one, and make it easy. Let's get into that first one. Know your content. Okay, here's what I mean. Or know your context, not content. I'm not talking about context like who specifically are you writing to. I mean like a bigger context of the company you're applying to. So not all companies and brands call for the same kind of cover letter. So I want you to ask yourself, who are you writing for? Is it an old-fashioned university? I mean, I don't mean to call universities old-fashioned, but is it a really big company where you're probably going to have to send your letter through a hiring manager and through HR? It's going to go through a lot of hands before it ends up in front of someone. Or is it a lady in her basement with an internet connection? You know, is it somebody who is maybe also a freelancer just looking for another person to help with their freelance work? So I think it's really important to keep in mind who the different audiences are that you're writing for. For a corporate job, I think a more traditional cover letter probably makes the most sense. And by traditional, I mean, here, let me pull up my friend's cover letter that got her a job at a university, so you can see what I mean. There it is. Okay, so this is what I would consider a really well-written traditional cover letter. You know, it starts out with saying who she is and what she's applying for, and then each paragraph is kind of about a different area of experience she has that makes her qualified for the job. It starts out with this pretty formal, dear sir or madam. That's what I mean when I talk about a really good traditional cover letter. Let me bring it back to presentation. Okay. So I think for a bigger company, like if you were applying to Microsoft or something, a traditional cover like that might make more sense because it's going to have to pass through an HR manager, people who are expecting just a certain standard. But I think that these days, and particularly in the field of tech, a lot of cover letters are really cover emails, and different rules apply to those. So let's see. This is an email, or this is a cover email that we're going to come back to several times that someone else I know used to get a freelance job. So let's just look real quickly at how completely different it is. Okay, so this one starts with hi instead of dear sir or madam. You can tell that it's a lot shorter. It basically says, hi, I'm Sarah, this is what I do. I'm looking for someone, a client to work for. I want to be on a regular project. Here's all this experience I have. I want to work at your company. Here's some more specifics about me. Please look at my portfolio. So to me, that looks quite a bit different. Like I wouldn't send this 10 years ago to someone when I was wanting a job. But this is what things are starting to look like in tech especially. You're going to be sending more of a cover email that gets right to the point and is less formal. Okay. Let's go back to the presentation. There you go. Okay, so it can information at you, right? Like, oh, you have to decide if you want this really traditional, what I would consider safer cover letter, or if you're going to do one that's more friendly and shorter and modern. And it's like, how are you supposed to decide? So I have a couple of questions you can ask. How big is the company? Is there a hiring manager? So for example, if I were applying to Skill Crush, I would probably notice that we have, I think, less than 10 maybe employees, and I can see that there's not really going to be a hiring manager as much as whoever gets the email is going to try to deal with it. Secondly, what tone do they use on their website or job listing? So if I use Skill Crush as an example again, I can see that in our newsletters and on the blog, there tends to be a more lighthearted tone. The CEO is friendly and comes across almost like someone you know in a lot of the marketing. Now, I don't think that means you can just act like you know someone. You can't say, hey, Ada, what's up, if you were emailing her. But I think that wouldn't keep me from saying, you know, dear Miss Burnett, hi, Ada. And I think that's just something, it is kind of tricky to figure out, but I think the more you look around at different companies, the more you'll realize that you can kind of tell what tone they take. And the reason that I think someone who uses a more informal tone in their business would want you to speak to them in a less formal tone is because I think they're going to want to see that you can fit seamlessly into their workflow. So if, you know, a company talks to each other in emails and does everything via chat and things like that, I think they're going to have a much easier time imagining you fitting into their team if you're using email and coming across as if you're comfortable there instead of, I mean, can you imagine chatting someone like, "Dear Madam?" You know, I'm not saying you would do that, but that's the reason I think you should try to a certain extent to match the tone of the company. And thirdly, what kind of job are you applying for? Is this a salaried job? You know, my friend whose letter got her the job at the university, she was applying for, you know, a full-time salaried job with benefits. But the other job, the other letter that I shared with you, was for a temporary freelance work, something that you would have a contract for. So I think that that makes a difference too. If you are applying with another developer to help work on a specific WordPress project, I think that getting right to the point and having a less stilted tone is going to work better in that situation. But if you're applying for, you know, a salaried job with benefits, you're going to go through a lot of steps to get hired. This is a long-term thing. And you might not be sending the letter to someone you would end up talking to every day. Then I think going towards a more formal option makes sense. Okay, so I just threw a lot of information at you. I mean, that's kind of how we've been doing it in these webinars, lots of information, and now you figure out how to make sense of it. So I want you to take action right now, and I want you to answer one of two questions. So get out your pen and paper or your Google Doc, wherever you're working, and ask yourself, if you have a specific position that you're interested in, so if you want to be a WordPress developer at a certain company, or if you know you want to apply to help someone with freelance, ask yourself this: is the position you're applying for more formal, or is it a casual, fast-paced environment? And if you don't have a specific position in mind, I want you to ask yourself a different question. Which type of company do you want to work for? You know, do you want to work for a bigger company that works in a more traditional way, or do you want to work at a fast-paced startup where, you know, you might end up avoiding some of those different hoops to jump through, but it would just be a different environment. So I want you to ask yourself that so you can frame the rest of this webinar with that idea in mind. So first, if you have a position in mind, is it a more formal situation, or is it a more casual, fast-paced environment? And if you don't have a position in mind that you are applying for, what type of company do you see yourself working for? And again, if you aren't sure about how to answer these questions, I would get on a company's website, look at how I would get on their newsletter, see what the tone of their newsletters are, look at their images. You know, in the About page, is everyone wearing a suit? Or like if you look at Skill Crush page, to use that for an example again, it's like Ada leaning on a desk. I think you can look at all these different things for clues to see what kind of tone will be expected of you. So I'll give you another second. Okay. Second, we're going to tell a short story. So I'm sure that you have, if you have ever written a cover letter or investigated cover letters, Googled it, I'm sure you've read that a short story, or that a cover letter is supposed to connect the dots. It's supposed to fill in any gaps that your resume leaves, your cover letter mends them. And it also is an opportunity for you to get personal about why you're right for the job. So, I mean, we all know that the point of the cover letter is to, like, okay, if you have a big gap where you're switching careers, like I imagine many of you guys are in the WordPress blueprint, you know, your cover letter is supposed to say, it may look like I haven't done WordPress, and that's true, but here's why I'm actually a really good person for it. You know, it connects things that might not be completely spelled out in the resume. But the problem to me is that really frequently cover letters are just long and boring and filled with stuff that doesn't really matter. And I mean that about my own cover letters too. And I should also note that right now I'm kind of shifting to talk about the less formal cover letters and cover emails that I see more frequently in tech. So I think if you guys were here for the resume webinar, you'll remember that we were really ruthless with our resumes. We just were slashing, we had our red pens out, we were taking out everything that did not have to do with the job. So if having a passion for music doesn't make you a better candidate for the job, then ditch it, you know? They can find that out by Facebook stalking you, honestly, and they will. So you don't have to tell, when I say tell a story, it doesn't have to be, you know, the story of your life and what makes you an interesting person. I think beefing up your social media really takes care of that, making you seem like an interesting human who has passion and things like that. So we want to look at this cover letter as completely utilitarian. Like, it's just there to tell a story about your resume, and your resume should also only have to do with this specific job you want. So let's look at my kind of not that great cover letter for a job that I didn't get. Where's it? Where's it? There it is. Okay. So if you look at this cover letter, I was applying at this food publication, and I think I let my passion make me really wordy because I obviously really loved food and writing about it. Oopsie. Can you guys still see that? Yeah. Okay. So if I'm just kind of evaluating this, I'm going to say it's really long. I mean, even if it's full of great content, I was applying for an online remote job. So I think I could have taken a hint from the company that they're more fast-paced. They wanted to find someone quickly. And this is just pretty overwhelming. I mean, like, I think that has more than 10 lines in that paragraph. Anyway, it's so long. And it's also organized in a way that probably only makes sense to me. It's organized by parts of my life and experience that I think are relevant to the job. So the job was going to be writing and taking photos of food. So, oopsie, this one's Carrie's. I want you to see mine. There you go. So, okay. Let me get back to this. All right, so like I said, you probably can tell that this is, or can't tell how it's organized, but I tried to make it in order of importance of experience that was most related to the job. So it's like, look, I have a food blog in this first part. And then it's like, oh, I also have worked in a kitchen. And then it says, and I worked in English, or I, studied English, so I'm going to be a great writer. And this is the whole bit about how passionate I am. And I think it probably would have been more effective if up front I just said in a much more succinct way all the ways that this experience would make the potential boss's life easier. So I think that I could have pared this down to just say, just tell the story of what makes me a good candidate for the job. So like right now, I'll go back to, this doesn't really seem to tell a story to me. It's just like, I'm good at this thing, and I'm good at this thing, and look, I'm good at this thing. I love this publication. And I'll go back to Carrie's because, like, I think I said, oh my gosh, it's so long. But I want to remember that this application, or this cover letter, was for a way different context, like a in-person, salaried, full-time. There's other reasons that this one's great that we'll come back to. But this was for a job completely online. So I think that this really wordy, long response was not necessarily the answer. So let's go back to the presentation, and I'll show you, if I could go back, what I think would have been a better choice. There you go. Okay, so I can go back to my cover letter and ask myself to only answer the most necessary questions. Who are you? What do you do? Like, what is your job now? What do you want to do? So what is the job that you want to have? Why are you going to be great at it? And prove it. So I think that our goal is to, in the shortest amount of words possible, get all of that across. And just before I have you guys dive in to answering some of these questions, for your cover letter, I want to go back to the informal one my friend did that got her a job. Let's see. There it is. Okay, so this one, I think, answers all those questions really quickly. This is Lauren, or this is Sarah. She currently is founding this startup, and she also, part of her identity is that she does work part-time. So she's answered who she is and her current job. What she's applying for, she says, I would love to work on this project with you. There you go. And then she says, what's the answer to what skills or experience do you have that proves you can do it? Oh, look, the company she built, and this must be a WordPress job. So she totally gets it using WordPress. And then she says she's basically maxed out understanding WordPress. And then she kind of has this caveat. This is specifically how I can help you. This is specifically why I'm qualified. And her proof, all she does to prove it is say, please look at my online portfolio. I mean, other than saying, I've done all this work in WordPress, instead of 3 long paragraphs like I had about, I wrote this blog and it made me really qualified, and I have this kitchen experience that made me really qualified. This one just says, I'm qualified for this job in this specific way, and for more proof, look at my portfolio. And I think that this is a lot easier to digest for someone who's reading it, to see if they're scanning, they can say, oh, keyword, this person has done this before, and now I can go look at all their proof. Okay, let's get you guys back to presentation. And now it's your turn to think through some of these questions. So I want you to take action now. And I want you to, if you have your current or an old cover letter open, just ignore that for a minute. And I want you to jot down what comes to the top of your mind just really quickly. Who are you? So that's easy. What do you do? And you want to frame this keeping in mind that the job you're applying for. So if I use myself as an example, you know, I'm a food blogger, and me and my husband have a restaurant, but I also do freelance work in web design, and I work at Skill Crush. So I wouldn't say all of those things. I would ask myself what job I'm applying for, and then say what I do. So if I'm applying for a freelance web design kind of job, I would say, I build sites on WordPress. And I might mention that I also work at this startup Skill Crush, So I'm not saying in what do you do, say all the things you do. Just say what is relevant to the job you're applying for. So what do you do? And then thirdly, what do you want to do? So this is the part where you tell them the job you want. Pretty simple, right? For that other friend, she wanted to help someone with a WordPress site. So she says, I want to, use my expertise on WordPress to help you turn your site into a profitable business. So instead of saying something like, I want the job of product manager, it's a good idea to make it actionable. Like, I want to use my product management skills to streamline your process and improve your workflow, something like that. So what are you going to do for this company? And remember, just jotting things down, what comes to the top of your head, so you don't have to worry about phrasing. Okay, and next, why will you be great at it? So this is the part where I want you to just narrow down 2 to 3 experiences that are going to make you great at this job. So if I were applying for a job building a WordPress site, I would say I build WordPress sites freelance, I run my blog on WordPress, and I work at a business that uses WordPress. And I mean, I would be more specific about what I do with WordPress, like I customized it for my job or, that kind of thing. But I don't want you to do what I did on my failed cover letter, where I said all the things about my life that come together and make me great at something. Mostly because that's not a short story, that's an epic. They just want the short version. So quickly jotting down 3 experiences that you have that prove that you're going to be great at it. And finally, where is your proof? And I know that the why will you be great at it is kind of proof, but by where is your proof, I mean, show me the facts. So this basically needs to be something that you can link to, I did this work here and it's linked. So here you're going to be listing, 3 projects or 2 projects that you did that prove that you can do this job. Okay, I'm just giving you a minute to answer those. So just to recap a little bit before we move on, we talked about 2 things so far to help write better cover letters. The first is understanding the context, what kind of company you're working for or applying for, and figuring out the tone by doing research on their website and figuring out what kind of tone you should use to correspond with the person who might hire you. And that'll help you figure out if you want to write a more traditional, several paragraphs long, page-long cover letter, or something more fast-paced and maybe an email type of thing. And we also talked about telling a short story. So how can you narrow it down to only the relevant things that are going to help this employer imagine you getting this job? Okay, so let's move on. Third thing, make it easy. And I think we talk about this, it feels like in every career webinar we've had, because we talked about making your resume easy to skim. The format should make it easy to skim visually, that your skills and your relevant work stand out. And we talked about making your bio easy so someone can tell exactly what you do just by looking at it. It's not cryptic. And it should be easy for someone to research you online and find out what kind of person you are. So we talked about making it easy for people to find you on social media and make it easy for people to scan your resume. And that also applies to cover letters. And this is because I think all of these things, we're imagining our potential boss looking at them. And I think if you imagine a potential boss's perspective, that really helps you narrow down on what does this person need to hear. So I'm saying that the next step to imagine when you're writing a cover letter is, how are you going to make life easier? So if we go back to my really long cover letter that didn't get the job, let me find it. There it is. Okay. Okay, I will say that this letter isn't that bad. It has good grammar, you know, it's formatted consistently. It's very specific about the position I want and the company. I mean, this is not something that I copy pasted 50 times, you know. You can tell that I spent time on this. But it's not easy. It is not easy for the hiring manager to skim or for a potential boss to look at. So all those things I said about, you know, this doesn't tell a good story, it's really because it's not easy. Someone can't just skim this and figure out the bottom line. This letter requires a lot of attention from the reader. And I found out later that the specific position I applied for had over 100 applications. So if the person had to read 100 of these, I don't know if mine would really stand out. It requires a lot of attention. So I basically had to go on faith that the person reading this had the stamina to read this in detail and figure out the story I was trying to tell. But here's how to fix it. I think what I needed to do was imagine this from a boss's perspective. Let me get you back to the presentation, not that. Okay. How are you going to make life easier, specifically your boss's life easier, or potential bosses? I think that bosses, and like I talked to a couple to be sure, I think that they have a few goals. One is making money, right? They want to have a profitable business. So writing with that in mind means making your cover letter explicit about how you're going to make their business make more money. I guess it sounds materialistic, but I think that's just the bottom line with business, you know? Even if you're a great person or you're funny, you're only going to get hired if you can help the business be in business. Secondly, taking care of their pain points. I think bosses want you to deal with the things that are stressing them out. So if there's something that is really hard for them and they're struggling, you can say that you can fix it. That is really powerful. So I think a couple webinars ago, I was talking about how a lot of people who want to hire a web designer here in Waco, where I live, really want you to handle everything. You know, they're overwhelmed. A lot of businesses here still don't have a website, or they don't have social media accounts. So if I can say, I will fix it, I'll make it better, you know, I can handle your entire online presence, then they're just like, okay. Like that was their pain point. They are stressed out by everything that has to do with the internet. And if I can say, I'll fix it, that is really valuable to them. So and then what value will you provide? I think that goes along with the first two. What specifically are you going to do to make the business more profitable and to make your boss's life easier? So when a boss skims your cover letter, they should see how you're going to help them make money and how you're going to deal with things that are difficult for them. So that's why talking all about my passions and lots of technicalities and including a lot of examples and having a really long letter might not have been the best choice. It might have been more valuable if I could have dialed in on what that business needed, what makes them money, how can I do that, and how am I going to make someone's life at that company easier. So I think if I could have done that in 2 paragraphs, that probably would have been more powerful for a boss when they're looking at it than my really long tale about all the reasons that I match this job description. And I was thinking about this last night too. A lot of times, if I'm writing a cover letter, I'm thinking from the perspective of like, oh my gosh, this job description is me. Like, I am this person. I need to have this job. And so then I go through all the reasons why I match the job description. But the boss isn't going to be looking at your cover letter like, check, check, check. Yes, this person is every bullet point I put on that job description. I think they're going to be like, wow, this person can make my life better. So I think that shifting from trying to write to the job listing to trying to write to the problems that your potential boss has can really make a difference. So let's go back to that real life example that I thought was a really good one that got somebody a job. Where did it? That's not it. There it is. Okay, so let's kind of talk about how this one makes life easy for the potential employer. Mimi, we're calling her. I guess I should change her name to Mimi at the front. Mimi explains that she has already run a profitable business doing the things she wants to do for this company. Where's that one? So she says her company, Mobile Mania, is entirely built on WordPress. Check. So this is the part that I really think is important. She says, we've literally pushed WordPress to the edge and have been able to run a super successful membership organization. So I think that's basically saying, I have made money with WordPress and I can make you make money with WordPress. So she is helping the boss see how she would make the business more profitable. And let's see what else. Oh yeah, I think she also does a really good job of saying how she's going to make the employer's life easier. So she has this bit that's framed like a caveat, right? Like, oh, I'm a coder, so I just want you to know this is my perspective. But what she also does here is really cool. She says, I approach development holistically and have a ton of experience product managing, so I can work with your team to make sure that we comprehensively think through all the technology decisions and how they will affect the marketing, user experience, etc., and vice versa. So this paragraph that she framed as being like, just in case it wasn't clear, I am a coder. She also said, I have experience in basically all of the things that will be involved on this project, and I can make it streamlined and I can make the workflow easy. So she's saying to the boss, I can handle it. I can handle everything. So I think that the person reading this letter would be like, knows how to make money, knows how to take some work off my plate. So I think if we go back to my letter, it doesn't really do that. It's all about how I'm perfect for the job. But for the employer, I think the bottom line is how seamlessly this person can come in and make life easier and their business better. And this one is all about why I think I'm good, you know? Okay, I'm going to get you guys back to the presentation. Where is it at? There it is. Okay, and I want you guys to take action again and think about how all of this applies to your situation. So you've already got on your list a couple of things. You've got if you're working at a more formal or less formal kind of environment, or what kind of job you want. And you've answered all the basics you need to have in your resume. What's your name, your current, what do you do currently? What are you going to do for the company? What experience do you have that proves it? And what examples do you have to prove it of your work? And now I want you to just go to the bottom of that list, and I want you to jot down what skills do you have that can help a potential employer make more money, and how can you make their life easier? What specific skills or experience do you have that can fix your potential boss's problems. So if I go back to that example of me applying for some freelance jobs, doing web design in Waco, I would say, I have helped these two people redesign their website and get more traffic and grow their business. And I would use specific numbers on that. And then I would say, and I understand, or I've worked with someone and I know how to handle all the social media and this and this and that. So I could say, I am technically a web designer, but I can help you with social media and content, or what else can you provide that is going to make workflow and the stress that your boss will feel easier. So bottom lines we're talking. Okay, and if you have your own recent or old cover letter out, I want you to get big fat highlighter and mark the things that will make an employer's life easier that's on here. What do you say that's basically translates to less work for someone else? And I want you to take your big fat highlighter and highlight anything that says, I know how to help you make money. I mean, it might not be in explicit terms, but I think if you can find spots in your cover letter that do that, then you can more easily rephrase them to stand out more. Like if you can use words like this, like they did in this other example, like I've run a successful business, keywords like profitable, successful, and mention being able to handle workflow. Okay, so you've got your highlighter, and now I want you to, after you've highlighted everything that does those two things, I want you to take a big grumpy red pen and slash out everything else. So if it is about a passion you have that's not related to the job, just cross it out, scratch it out. If it's all about some technicalities that the boss doesn't need to know about to know if you're going to be good at the job, can scratch all those out. Like, for example, I think in my letter, I try to explain the timeline of my life. Like, first I worked in a kitchen, then I went to grad school, and then I worked in the kitchen again. And all along I had this restaurant. And it's like, that doesn't really matter to the boss. I should have just said something like, I've been creating content about food for 3 years, and this is how many views I get, And if you're getting a little overwhelmed, I don't want you to worry, because I have a worksheet guide that asks all these questions and has blanks, and you can sit down and think it through and take more time on your cover letter. But right now I'm just trying to go with your immediate reaction, because sometimes that can be really valuable. What comes to the top of your head first? Okay, so, and I have this on here, the basics, because I don't want to forget that some things are really important. Like if we go back to my friend's cover letter that is more traditional and got her the job, even though it might not be appropriate for applying at a tech startup, it still has these basic things in it. And here are some that I mean. Be consistent. So I mean in your grammar and your format and your tone. So if you say hi at the beginning, hi so-and-so, I don't think you should close out with, very sincerely yours. You should probably say something like take care, or thank you for your time, cheers. So keeping things consistent throughout. And with format, I mean, like, even if things are less formal these days, you still want your email to look like you really paid attention. You put the same font all throughout, the same size, the spacing is accurate or is all the same. And you want to pay some attention to grammar. So I think it should still be easy to read and should sound professional. It just may sound a little bit more conversational. So being consistent throughout. Second, being specific. So I'll open up my friend's more traditional cover letter that worked too. But I think that even if you're writing a longer, more traditional cover letter, you can be specific about what makes you valuable, why your experience is relevant, and what exactly you're going to do in this job that's valuable. So I just want to switch back and show how even in the longer cover letter, she did that. Where is it at? Okay. So like there's specific things in here, like she has numbers. And since I know what job she has now, I think it makes more sense to me, but she's talking about things she did that are like exactly what she's going to do at this new job. So being specific and consistent. Let me get you back. There you go. Okay, and getting to the point. So this one applies, I think it applies to both types of cover letters. If you can say it in fewer words, then say it in fewer words. But I think it especially applies to a less formal cover letter or cover email that, I mean, you know, when you get an email, if you have to scroll very much, how likely are you to read it and respond to it right away? You know, I think the shorter the paragraphs are, the shorter or the more quickly it gets to the point, the more likely it is that someone will respond to it. Okay, so those were the 3 steps we talked about for writing an epic cover letter that will get you hired. Not epic, a short cover letter that will get you hired. They were understanding the context, knowing who you're talking to, basically, telling a short story, so only including the most relevant material, and making it easy, making it skimmable so your boss knows exactly why it is valuable to your boss. And then we talked about some general things like staying consistent and specific and getting to the point. And I just want to make one more note about being specific. So, I mean, like, don't say you'd be a perfect fit for this job. Say, I bring this XYZ valuable thing to the table. So before I send you away with your own copies of these good and less good letters, and I have a really fun worksheet for you to help you write a cover letter, and it even has Mad Lib's resource with fill in the blanks. You're basically looking at a cover letter template. I want to answer some user questions. So let's make me on the screen. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Leslie says, do all industries require cover letters? I think probably not, but I think that even if a company doesn't ask for one, you can write one. And I think that the more prepared you are and the more you can show that you're going to be really great at this job, the better. That doesn't mean I think you should shove tons of information. I think you should write a brief cover letter that ties it all in. So, and also say they specifically don't want a cover letter, you can use these techniques in the email. I mean, I see a lot of companies saying, we want an email titled this with this kind of stuff in the content. You know, you can still put your kind of stealth cover letter in the email that does all these things. And I think that would be perfect because it's supposed to be short anyway if you are applying for a smaller, more fast-paced kind of company. So no, they don't all require cover letters probably, but that doesn't mean you can't write one. Include links in the cover letter. That's helpful. How many is too many? This is Aliona. Yes, I think some companies are going to be printing out cover letters still, so that wouldn't like matter. But I think a lot of people aren't printing them out, they're just skimming them. And I think linking is really important, like just saying, here are 3 things I did that are important. I would keep the links down to fewer than 4. I think it depends how you do it, 4 or 5. Like if you had a list that said, these are 3 projects I did that apply, link, 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 that is less invasive to the reader than like 3 blue things throughout a paragraph. So I think depending on how you format it, I would try to keep it around 2 or 3, but definitely not more than 5. That's just my personal opinion, though. I'm not sure how to approach a high-level exec. Should I ask for an informational interview? I think that's a really good idea. I think you can use a lot of these techniques in, instead of saying, you can use these techniques for writing cover letter in the email to try to get an informational interview. So I think you can be explicit about wanting a job but needing more information. And I think to make it more likely that this potential employer will give you the informational interview, valuable for them, like definitely offer to buy them coffee or lunch. But then also you can, like, maybe you have been a customer in that field before and you can give lots of feedback about taking their classes or something. Let's see. Okay. So I see a couple of you saying you want to do things that you've never done before. I think that's fine because you're in this blueprint. I guess I'm assuming that you're interested in doing something involving tech that you've never done before. There are a lot of ways to bulk up your portfolio and do projects without having done it before at a company. And I think that you can also use some of your past experience to say why you would bring a different kind of value to the company. I think the key here is doing any projects. So doing free projects, doing everything you can to fill your portfolio and have things to refer to in your cover letter, even if they weren't, like a salaried position at a design company or something like that. Let's see. Okay, I don't know how to pitch freshly learned skills that are not paid for by clients. I think you pitch those like they're skills. Like you don't have to say, I just started learning web design. I mean, you can say, after taking all of these web design classes in this year, I have already done these projects. You can frame it in a positive way, like, look how quickly I went from just learning to doing this awesome site. I could do that for you too. And I don't think you need to say, it doesn't matter if you were paid for it. Like, if I designed my friend's site for free, it doesn't matter. It's still an example and I still got that experience. So I don't think you should say if you're paid or not. It doesn't matter. Carrie DeVito, that's really funny. She says she's gotten letters with response. You would be unchallenged in this position, but your letter was so good we had to let you know. That's good. I guess that means you need to apply for a harder, something more that you thought was above what you could do. That's a good problem. Yeah, so I think this one, I think it's Aliona saying it. I write power support of others and causes I care about. I cringed at hyping skills. I just acquired, feels like I'm faking it. Okay, I think that one way around that, sort of being uncomfortable with being like, look how qualified I am for this. And like, sometimes you don't even feel like you're qualified in certain ways, and in other ways you are way overqualified. I think that writing a shorter, more to the point cover letter can actually help you avoid that, because you don't have to say things like, I know how to do this and aren't I good at it, and I know how to do this and look how good I'm at that. you can just say like, this is a relevant experience I have and I can use it to make your business better. You know, so you don't have to like do that propping yourself up kind of thing as much. Carrie DeVito says, what is a tech cover letter like? Is it shorter or longer? I think we've probably addressed a lot of that by now, but I think that it is shorter. It's going to depend on the company. I don't have a lot of experience with like, you know, applying to Google, but I imagine that that's a more formal setting with like a more traditional longer cover letter. But most people I know who work in tech wrote email cover letters to a single person, you know, and they're more to the point and about, this is the work I did, this is the work I can do, and I can make your business better. Oh, that's interesting. What if I already met someone in person from a company like Microsoft? Okay, it is Microsoft. And I was given a business card and told to reach out whenever I wanted. What tone to use? Okay, what I would do is, I'm drawing this answer from experience my friend has had with this, having a connection on the inside. At a big company, still that person that gave you the card, unless they're the hiring, like the top person, I don't think they can just hand you a job. So I would use them as a resource throughout the hiring process. Like say, I saw 2 job listings go up on the Microsoft job board, and I'm thinking of applying for them. Do you think these make sense for me, or would you put me in another direction? Do you have any advice? If they say, yes, apply for them, you know, whatever happens, you have basically said, I'm gonna apply for this job. Remember talking to me? So then throughout, you can say, you can email them again and say, I just submitted my application. I'm coming in for an interview. I would love to come talk to you about, you know, your needs at your company, so I can, you know, really at my interview say how I'm going to be great for this company. So I think instead of altering your tone as if you're talking to that person, to assume that your cover letter still is going to go through a lot of other people. Like, even if this person who gave you the card likes you, they might not have the final say. So I think that you can use a more friendly tone in emails with that specific person. But unless you're sure that the application materials are only going to go to that person, I would still use a slightly more formal tone in a big company like that. I hope I'm helping. Do you want to prove your statements in the cover letter? Patrice says. Yes, and by proving them, I think you can, oopsie, I think I cut out for a minute. The answer I'm thinking is yes. To prove statements in your cover letter, I think the best thing to do is just give a specific example of when you did that, and if you can, to put a link to the project. Yeah, Carrie, I feel you. Carrie says, I've tried to write cover letters that are generic in nature, but I find that it's difficult to get my skills across in this way. I totally agree. And I think it's because everything that we talked about for writing a really effective cover letter depends on the specific job. You know, so writing a general one, it just feels misplaced. Leslie says, a friend once asked me to draft a cover letter for her. She thought that it would be more effective to have someone else call out her strengths and accomplishments. It was an interesting idea. Would you recommend trying this tactic? Well, for me, I think that as an exercise, that would be cool because you could see it from someone else's perspective, but I would never give that cover letter that someone else wrote, I would never turn that in as your own. I mean, I think that what I would do is, if you wanted to do that to see from someone else's perspective what they think your strengths are, I would get that and I would read it and I would put it aside and then write your cover letter. I just think it's dangerous to do things in other people's words, and it might not be legal if you're passing it off as your own words. Okay, Louisa says, how do you approach a company that does not want a CV, but that you show them something? There's a company I've been eyeing for a while, but I'm intimidated because I don't feel like putting on a show to get their attention. Okay, that's really interesting. I'm assuming they mean like show us an awesome project, like show us why you're impressive. I think that what you could do is keep working on your projects and try to work on projects that are challenging and that maybe involve coming up with something new, or that you're going to change something just a little bit to make it your own. And by that, I mean like come up with a new way to code something, or a new fix for something, or try to make your own plugin, something like that, if we're talking about WordPress. I think that this is actually a perfect opportunity also to use all these tactics we're talking about for cover letters in an email. So you make it really short, really powerful. It says how you're going to help the company succeed and how you're going to fit in seamlessly so that everyone's life is easier. And I don't mean you should say those words like, I'm going to make you money, I'm going to make your life easier. I just think that there should be explicit moments in the cover letter that get those points across. But I think that you can do that in an email and include links to the something that you've created. And yeah, I mean, I think that you can actually just deal with that in that way. Because even if you design like a really big, impressive, showy project to get their attention, you're going to have to introduce it in some way in the email. And the way you introduce it can determine if anybody even looks at it, you know? So I think you can still use these cover letter tips for how to frame the email or introduce whatever project you're going to share. Okay, we are slightly over time, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. But if you guys have more questions, then please just tweet me or email hello@SkillCrush or Randall@SkillCrush. And let's see. Okay, so today we talked all about getting your cover letter into shape. We talked about knowing the context, writing a really short story to show why you are the best for the job, and thirdly, to make it easy, make it skimmable, show your boss why they should hire you. Now it's time for you to act. So I am posting these really cool resources on Mighty Bell. I've put together a guide to help you, to walk you through all these steps to rewrite your cover letter, and it has these cool templates in the back, and it also has the 2 good examples of the more formal and the less formal cover letters that worked and got people jobs. I think if you are applying for smaller tech companies, I would focus more on the less formal one. But if you're applying for the Microsoft-y kind of bigger company job, that's why I threw the more formal one in there too. And okay, these are 2 steps I want you to take. So when you close out this window, I want you to take a good hard look at your current or your old cover letter, and I want you to be really ruthless. Think about all the things we talked about. And then I want you to rewrite a new cover letter. And if it's short and to the point, it shouldn't take you the whole day, you know? You should make yourself stay really focused. And after that, I want you to send us a tweet at SkillCrush or leave us a comment on Facebook, or you can send us an email saying the most important thing you learned about cover letters today and what you're going to do to write better ones. So we love getting tweets and emails. Email us at hello@skillcrush.com or tweet us at SkillCrush or at Crandall Cakes. Thanks for coming.